Hello, everybody, and welcome back on another very interesting conversations on artificial intelligence. Paolo is your host today, and with me today we have Piyush, who is the head of product management for artificial intelligence at natural language processing startup here in Silicon Valley, and has had a very brilliant career in machine learning as product manager at Fortune 500 companies. Hello, Piyush. How are you today?
Hi, Paolo. I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on this show. I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. So before we go, we want to give our audience a little bit of overview of what we're going to discuss today. So Piyush specializes in the area of chatbots. So what they are and why they're important for this show. So first of all, these are assistants that interact with human beings in a variety of capacities, and they will be more and more pervasive in our lives, both on the consumer side, such as the Facebook and the WhatsApp of the world, as well as on the business side. So it's something that is going to penetrate our lives, and that's one of the reasons why we're going to discuss them today. So I wanted to thank you, whoever has already been at Conversation Artificial Intelligence, and if you're new, it is an honor and privilege to have you here today. So let's start and let's look a little bit to the work that Piyush does every day. So Piyush, if we went back a little bit in the past, and you are the person that you're today, but you have to reintroduce yourself to the sweetheart at high school, what would you tell her about yourself?
If I go back in time?
Yes.
Well, it's a tough question, right? So when I was growing up back in India, we did not have any computers in my school. And I was also one of the shy kids, so I didn't really have a lot of interactions with girls growing up. So if I go back, it'll be a very tough thing to explain that what computers are and what is artificial intelligence. But what I will describe myself as that I am someone who has come from the future, and what I'm doing right now is I'm trying to make future even better, so that things are, even complex things around you, are so simple and natural to interact with. So as a human being, you don't really have to worry about how to operate a computer. I remember when in our school we got the first computer. It was kept in a separate room, and you had to take your shoes out before you could enter the room because it could get damaged by the dust. Now technology is all around us, but we are also overwhelmed with this technology so many times. So I think one thing I would like to explain is, if I go back in time, is that in the future, there will be so much technology around you. But what I'm doing is I'm ensuring that you can interact with technology just like you interact with other human beings, which is without any training.
And that's very interesting. One of the things that we're going to discuss shortly. However, before we go further, let's look at another aspect. So, in Silicon Valley, working in machine learning, right now it's very appealing. And there are lots of people that want to jump in and so on and so forth. It looks like you've been there for quite a bit of years. And maybe you'd like to tell our audience a little bit about your path in the last 7, 8 years, and how you become specialized in this sector, and what you did to become specialized and so on, and how did you get involved?
Absolutely, yeah. Honestly, I think I was a little fortunate because I spent 7 years here in the Valley working with SAP, which is an amazing company to work for. And I just happened to be fortunate enough to work for their emerging technologies group. And as part of working there, I was always exposed to emerging technologies like blockchain, IoT, in-memory computing, and of course, artificial intelligence, machine learning, natural language processing. I think I'm a person who is really curious about things. So when I came across machine learning and I heard that you can actually teach computers to learn just the way human beings learn, I got really curious. How does it even happen? We as human beings are so different. We have a brain. A computer does not have a brain. So I got really curious about how does this thing work. And I think it was out of curiosity and being in that situation where I was exposed to these technologies and I was working with some of the biggest customers and the brightest minds in this field, it challenged me, and I challenged myself to continuously learn what is this field all about and what is the big promise about. And yeah, I think it was a mix of being in that situation and my curious nature that I happen to be in this field. And now I've been working in this field for a few years. And then eventually, I think I decided that it was time for me to look for a different challenge, and which, when you're in the Valley, you always want to work for a startup. And I came across a startup that was focused on NLP and is where I'm currently working at. So I just happened to move on to this new role because I wanted to try something different, a new challenge.
So, and that's definitely very interesting. Also something that maybe for people that are outside the Silicon Valley, we just like for a brief moment explain that there are tons of startups here. Some are, bootstrapped, but a lot of them are also funded by VCs. And one path that usually people take is they work in large companies for a while, then they jump in a startup. Then if things goes well, they retire. If things do not go well, they go back, or they may be going to a different startup.
Yeah.
Anyhow, with that said, we said that in the last few years you have, dived into more of natural language processing and then eventually conversational AI. So in this journey, have you taken any particular education, or you have kind of self-learned from, the work, your sources, and so on?
Yeah. So I think there are two different paths you can take when it comes to artificial intelligence. One is where you know enough to know what the technology can do and what are its limitations. And of course, the second path is where you become a data scientist, you become a researcher, and you help the technology grow. So if you want to do the second, then of course you need a lot of education in that field, because then you have to understand it in and out. What I have done is I work as a product manager, and my role is it's basically at the intersection of technology, business, and user experience. So what I do is I have to have fair amount of understanding of the technology to understand where can it actually deliver business value. Now, even to do that, I didn't have to go to school to specialize in artificial intelligence, but I did have to take a few online courses, and then I had to learn Python on my own. I had to take tutorials on TensorFlow and PyTorch on my own. I think there's just so much information out there on this field that if you really want to add value, if you want to build products, and if you want to deliver value for your users and for your customers, you really need to understand what is this technology all about. The good thing about our time is that there is so much information that is freely available. People publish their code on GitHub, and they're on Coursera or on EDX, on Udacity. There are specializations that are offered by institutions like MIT, Stanford, Berkeley, that you can do over 5 or 6 months, and then you have pretty good grasp on the technology. So you wouldn't become a researcher, but you'll have a very thorough understanding in terms of applied AI.
So that's certainly, I think, valuable viewpoint, and it also points at this need that people have, especially us working in technology, to keep somehow updated and kind of being able to take a turn during your own career, being it as incorporated or even as as entrepreneur. But you need to be on a constant learning curve if you're working on something cutting edge like this type of technologies. But now, without further ado, let's take a look a little bit about what chatbots are. I know that you have a particular view on this, and maybe it would be interesting to get to know your view on chatbots.
Sure. So I think in a very simple way, what chatbots are trying to do is they're trying to expose business processes, and they're trying to expose systems in a more natural way to end users. So this is going back to the initial point I was making. So as human beings, talking and speaking and having conversations comes very naturally to us. Like, you and I have never met. We have spoken on the phone a couple of times, but we can already have this conversation, and it's a fluent conversation. So this is something that comes very naturally to human beings. What does not come naturally is interacting with the world around us. We We don't know how to interact with our smartphones. We have to go through a training process for that. We don't know how to, let's say, if I give a hammer to a child, he or she would not know what to do with the hammer. So there is a training process involved. It's not a natural thing to figure out how things work. Now, what chatbots are trying to do is they're trying to abstract away all the complexity of the world from the end user. So as an end user, you don't really have to worry about how to book a flight or how to book a meeting room or how to file for an auto insurance claim. So all these complexities of business processes, they will be hidden away from the end user, and you would just be talking or having a conversation with an intelligent assistant, just like you would be talking to a human being. So the promise of chatbots is to provide this ease of interacting with the complex world around us without having to rely on human beings. Of course, you can put a human being at every single place where people need to interact with things, but we will run out of human beings. And so we need to look beyond the simple solution. And the next best solution is to automate some of these things. And that is exactly what chatbots are trying to do.
So in theory, a technology like this should simplify the process for a lot of users in various capacities to interact with the machine and get the outcome that they want. Mm-hmm. But what is the threshold for this really bringing value? And where is the point in which the user instead has, a sense of alienation that has a negative sense because maybe it's not working right, or simply there can be the situation where the user wants to feel that he's talking to a human, not to a robot, and gets busy.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Paolo. So when it comes to chatbots and AI in general, I think there are really high expectations. So, and at times it's good, and at some other times it's not so good for people who are building solutions here. The reason is that when you go out and you launch a solution that is powered by AI, people have expectations that, oh, this is AI, so this can do every single thing that I want. And that is not true, right? So every technology has limitations. Human beings have limitations as well. So I think what helps is to define clearly what is the scope of this AI. For example, if you have an AI that helps you find the nearest parking spot, for example, and while driving, for example, let's say it's built into your car, and you can talk to this thing and it knows from your GPS where the destination is, and it can recommend where the parking spots are. And let's say all just using natural language, you are able to book a parking spot. Now, this is an amazing use case. But what if the user then says something that is beyond the scope of this solution? Maybe he or she also wants to book a hotel or a restaurant. And now this is outside the scope of this solution. So this expectation mismatch, I think, is one of the things that has caused frustration in the past, because users expected, oh, if I talk to a human, I can talk about all the things. But that is not the case with chatbots. Most of the chatbots that exist even today are designed to solve a specific set of problems. And this is going back to the way they are trained. They're trained on a corpus of data, and you get that corpus of data for that specific set of use cases that you want the chatbot to handle. And I think this expectation mismatch is something that causes frustration among users, because they think, oh, this is not really intelligent because it can book a parking spot, but it cannot book a table in a restaurant for me. It cannot, because it's not designed to do that. So I think that is that area where people start getting frustrated. So if there is enough education in terms of what each chatbot solution is designed to do, I think they'll take care of a lot of frustration.
So you have, as we said before, you've been working in this sector for quite a bit. How would you, if in any way, define what is the difference, or how chatbots are being used differently between the business to consumers type of applications and the B2B type of application? Where is the divide, the frontier between these two type of applications?
Yeah, I think fundamentally, I mean, B2B and B2C are different in their spectrum. So when you're talking about B2C use cases, you're basically giving a technology to end users. And end users are free to interact with this solution in whichever way they want. So you have to build your technology that is capable of handling all these scenarios. And this is where a lot of frustration comes as well, right? So the previous point that I was making was actually more for B2C chatbots, because you build a chatbot that, let's say, works for an airline and helps you check the status and claim or track your baggage. But let's say it does not help you change your reservation. And that's where frustration starts building up that, oh, you have an assistant here that only does so much, but I want it to do more. So that is the expectation from users in B2B, B2C scenarios. Now, the good thing about B2B scenarios is that the technology, first of all, it has to be more accurate, because you're talking about the stakes are much higher in B2B, right? So if an interaction goes wrong in B2C, it does not have the same amount of implications as a Fortune 500 company as a client, and there the technology doesn't work. So you have to build your technology stack, which is really robust. But at the same time, you can also compartmentalize your solution in a better way, because in most of the B2B scenarios, there are well-defined business processes, and the users who are actually using your solutions are only focused on that process that they're supposed to handle. So if you build, let's say, a solution that helps people, let's say you're building a solution for for customer service. Now, let's say the goal of the solution is to look at all the knowledge base items and summarize them and bubble up the top 2 or 3 recommendations based on an incoming ticket. Now, your agent, who is actually your user in this case, is very happy just looking at these top 2 or 3 scenarios. There is no reason for this agent to go beyond the scope of this solution, because he or she clearly understands that the solution is designed to help me analyze my knowledge base and make recommendations. So I think it's easier. You have to build the right technology for sure, but it's easier to set the right expectations in B2B scenarios.
So, and if you look at this from a slightly different perspective, the fact that you need more kind of a context awareness in the B2C versus the B2B, does it make at a very high level, does it make the technology more complex on the B2C than on B2B on average, or that is an inaccurate statement? There are situations where things are the other way around.
Yeah, I think, so in some ways that is correct, but the reverse is also correct in some ways, right? So again, because the stakes are much higher in B2B scenarios, so you have to ensure that the technology works way better and more accurately than it would for B2C scenarios. But at the same time, it's more difficult to set the right expectation in B2C scenarios, because you're talking about millions of users. So you cannot really train every single user. Now, because of that, it's easier in B2C scenarios that people get frustrated with the technology and they try to do or use it in some ways for which it was never designed. But in some ways, that's also good, because what it helps you do is then you can analyze all that data. Again, right, let's say we're talking about e-commerce, and you're talking about a solution that helps you find the right size and helps you check nearby inventory and all that stuff. So this is the design scope. But let's say users also try to ask for things like, hey, what is trending this year? Now, initially, Chatbot was not designed to do this thing, but you can analyze this data. You can collect this data from millions of interactions and see what is it that the actual users would want the chatbot to do. And this will help to keep optimizing the bot in the future. This is something that becomes more difficult in B2B scenarios, because people will only use it for what it was designed for. So that, in a way, is a limitation as well.
So, I think the general public has started to become aware of chatbots, because, they are available on Facebook. There are lots of marketing chatbots on Facebook. There are lots of websites today that when you go, you have a chatbot that you talk with. So on that side, I think the general public is familiar with that. But could you name, to the extent that you can, like one critical application, the B2B, that, just to give an example of what are these applications in the B2B, one that is really critical, that if it fails, then, like where failure is not tolerable, basically.
I would say in B2B, customer service is probably the highest value use case. Now, the reason I think it's highest value use case is because of a few things, right? Few reasons. The first one is that there have been a bunch of studies already done that quantify the value of retaining a customer versus acquiring a new customer. And it's a few times more expensive to acquire new customer compared to retaining existing customers. And your customers who stay with you and are in general happier with your solutions are more likely to keep purchasing from you. So there are multiple benefits of retaining your customers, but all of this depends on what is the quality of service you provide to them. So expectations keep growing, right? So people expect faster things, faster resolution, whether you're on phone. Companies have tried to provide really good solutions for customer service over time, but just that expectations keep growing. Now, you and I, we have both been customers at different points in our lives, and we have interacted with customer service. I have not come with any person so far who said that, oh, I had an amazing customer service experience. Now, there are many reasons, right? Because the first thing is you want to be heard. So you want a human being on the other side. You want the resolution to be quick. But there's so many times where you either have to wait for 10 or 15 minutes before the call gets answered. If you send a ticket or an email, it takes hours to days before you hear back from them. And it just does not feel right. You don't feel valued. Now,
just for a second, not including the times in which you had to talk to a new guy and then you had to re-explain everything from scratch, 10 minutes of conversation from scratch. And then they send you to the third guy or the third ladies. And that's really like when you feel like I'm killed.
No, that is exactly correct, right? So if I am on an IVR where our menu options have changed and blah, 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 I never listen to it. All I say is I keep saying representative over and over again until I'm transferred to a human being. So this being heard is an innate need for us. So all human beings want to be heard, especially in the case of an emergency. And that's where most people actually reach out to customer service. So this area is of critical importance. Now, the good thing is that NLP can solve a lot of problems here. So there have been research and studies around this thing where companies and organizations and researchers asked end users, hey, what do you expect from customer service? And they want it fast, and they want the human agent or customer service agent to empathize with them, and they just want the resolution quickly. They don't want to be transferred from one person to second to third. And when the researchers asked users, would you want AI to handle your solution and provide faster resolution? And the overwhelming answer was no, which is surprising. So even when you say that AI can do all this, would you still want AI to take care of your solutions? You'll get faster resolution, you won't be transferred to multiple people, and you will be heard. But the answer was no, at least from the majority. And the reason is that people have interacted with chatbots in the past, and those chatbots were not robust enough. So the mental image people have now is that chatbots cannot do much. But now the technology has advanced a lot. We have way more data. We have way more advanced technology. And it is now possible to automate at least 30 to 50% of all incoming traffic for customer service requests and provide resolution, not in days and hours, but in seconds.
So you see that is where, though, I feel it's still a challenge for people in product to make decisions, because when we say it's possible to automate it 30 to 40%, okay, so that seems great, but the problem with product, I think, is that you have to go from thinking in terms of 30, 40% to the experience of the individual people. So how do you manage and handle the experience of the 60% that cannot get solved? Because that is likely to be a 60% of situations where you have to gently transition over the person from AI to human, and how do you handle that basically?
Yeah, that's a great question, Paolo. So this is actually a good point, because a lot of products don't focus on user experience. Right now, if you look at an end user who is in a situation where he or she needs help, the first thing they want is to be heard. They want someone to acknowledge that their situation has been understood and somebody is working on it. Now, if you send an email for an item that was lost during shipment, it might take a day or 2 days before, or sometimes even longer, before someone actually responds to your email. Now, all these hours and days while you are waiting for someone to acknowledge causes anxiety, and you don't feel valued when that is happening. Now, what AI can do, of course, it can automate a few things, right? It can automate, let's say, 30, 40, 50% of all traffic. But what about the other stuff? Let's say this issue we are talking about is one of those things that AI cannot automate. So this is where AI is used as an enabler. Of course, it can solve a few things, but it cannot solve everything. You still need human agents. But the good thing about having AI is that it'll look at every single thing that's coming your way, and it'll see, okay, I'm trained to handle this. I'll resolve this, and this one. Oh, I don't know how to resolve this one. However, what I'll do is I'll send a response to the user that we have received your concern, and so person is looking at you, and you can couple NLP with other predictive modeling algorithms to see that this ticket came, how long would it take before the user gets the first response? So you can even provide an ETA to the user, so that you are not sitting there as a user not knowing what's happening to your important shipment. You will get a response right away, and you'll also get an expected time of resolution. Now, these are things that people are expecting. They don't expect everything to be resolved in the moment. They want someone to acknowledge that, yes, we know you have a problem, and we are working on this thing.
So just to make sure, the term NLP stands for natural language processing, and it's a part of machine learning that is focused at analyzing text and even synthesize answers and so on. It's a pretty large area of machine learning. I wanted to shift just slightly bit towards business here, and it's basically, what type of business models are emerging in this sector? Do you think that the methods of monetizations are following, the standard software as a service path, or there are more multiple monetization business models that are emerging in this ecosystem?
Yeah, I think so. For the most part, I think most of the solutions are a software as a service model, right? Because at the end of the day, we are talking about the technology. Now, when you talk about business model, this technology has to generate some business value for people to show interest in this thing. Now, people are using NLP in different ways. Some people are, as you were saying, some people are building these dialogue systems where you can have conversations with chatbots. There are people or companies who are working on summarizing a lot of knowledge bases, right? So that adds another kind of value, a different kind of value. And then you can have NLP-enabled devices all around you, like cars, which are NLP-enabled, so you can interact with every single thing in the car using just your voice. So there are different ways how people are leveraging this technology to make life simpler and easier for us. And when you do that, when you make things simpler and easier to interact with, you generate business value. So there are different business models, but most of them currently are focused on software as a service.
I see. So there is nothing that you have seen, like, for example, if you look at the electronics or the semiconductor industry and the firmware, usually there are situations like licensing firmware that goes into the hardware, or there are situations in which, like there are companies that build only the design and then they license the IP. So yeah, those type of business models are not common in this area. So we're predominantly software as a service type of environment.
Yeah, so good point again, right? So there are again, so most of the startups that are working in this field, and most product development that is happening in this field is focused on software as a service business model. However, there are many companies, especially large enterprises, that are building their own chatbots or conversational assistants. And of course, that comes as a natural evolution of how you interact with their solutions. So if you look at a few banks, for example, Bank of America has their own voice assistant called Erica now. Now there is no monetization associated with that. However, since there are startups who are offering this service to other banks, and those other banks are starting to incorporate this NLP solution into their banking solutions, other banks also have to cope up and they have to provide this service. So there are companies that are working on this thing in-house and or maybe with other partners, and they are trying to, in a way, conversationally enable their technology stack and their solution stack. But I think that is as part of natural evolution of what is the next frontier in how people interact with solutions.
I see. So when we look at, this question is coming natural to me, and it's about the startups. Any new technology, there's this wave of startups, of which few will succeed, many won't. What do you think is going to be the key for a startup to succeed? And two is basically, what do you think is going to happen of all these many chatbot startups? I mean, I don't know how many you have counted, but I've counted a lot. So yeah. Of course there are, like we are at the kind of a begin of this technological wave. But what do you think is going to happen? And now they're going to win.
Well, yeah, that's an interesting point, Paolo, because it does happen in the Valley here. Every time there is a new technology, there are a few hundred startups that are trying to do something or the other using that technology. It happened with cloud, it happened with big data analytics, and it also is happening with AI, with IoT, with blockchain. Hasn't started happening with quantum computing, but I wouldn't be surprised if in a few years everybody is talking about quantum computing.
I will. That's my next thing.
Yeah, so it does happen, right? And this is good, right? It's good because it shows that there is a lot of promise in this technology. Now, a lot of startups are there that are building chatbots, but I think the key that will be there that'll decide which are the startups that actually succeed and which do not make it will be a couple of things. One, you have to understand the technology, and you have to. The reason you need to understand the technology is because every technology has limitations. Unless you build your solution around those limitations, it will not work. So you have to understand and acknowledge the limitations of the technology. And of course, you have to keep evolving as the technology evolves. Secondly, you have to solve a real business problem. It has to generate value. So simply because of the fact that you're leveraging a fancy technology does not mean that businesses will see value in that thing. So you need to identify the right use case which delivers real business value. So that's also critical. And the third thing is you need to build your product in such a way that users want to use it. Now, this is where education and compartmentalization of the problem and setting the right expectations, all this becomes really important, because you can solve a problem, you can build with the right technology, but if it's not built with the end user in mind, it's not going to work really well. And a couple of other considerations, especially for AI, that you have to keep in mind that there is a lot of excitement around AI, but that's only in the Valley most of the times. If you go outside the Valley, people are actually a little nervous about AI. That is it going to take away my job, or what if it takes over the world? So there are a lot of this anxieties have been created by media coverage, but sometimes they do a good job. Sometimes they hype a lot of things, but nonetheless, there is some fear around this technology. So you have to work in a way that AI is, and any technology, software is not a replacement of people. Software augments people. Technology enables people to focus on higher order things. That is what that's what technology has always done. To emphasize on that point, I want to quote a study that was done in the UK that analyzed at least 100 years worth of data to see what has been the impact of technology. Has it created jobs or has it reduced the number of jobs in the market? And the overwhelming finding of that study was that over the course of a century, technology has created jobs. Yes, it has made some jobs redundant, but at the same time, it has created higher order jobs which need critical thinking and reasoning, something that machines are still not capable of doing.
Yeah, and don't you think, I want to, build on that, because I'm one of the ones that are more of an optimist rather than a pessimist.
Yeah.
Don't you think that having systems, even super intelligent systems, would augment actually human intelligence and would free us from a lot of, some part of the cognitive work that we do, like, writing a Word document. It is highly intellectual work, but it's also time consuming. Like if I could tell a computer, I would like to write an essay about this and this, and I would like to, change a little bit this, I want this type of picture, I want that. I mean, it would expand my creative ability. Don't you think that we go on a path of augmentation? We free more and more the human being from boring activities, if you like.
Yes, to your question, that's a fascinating point, and I think that brings us to another aspect of AI, which not a lot of people talk about, right? So people talk about self-driving cars and image recognition and auto tagging on some social media websites. The ethics part of AI is something that people don't really talk about much. Now, what the point that you were making is actually very philosophical, right? So as human beings, I think, yes, we are super intelligent and smart as a species. But at the same time, I think we are constrained by our current way of thinking. Now, a lot of things have evolved at a very rapid pace in the last 20 or 30 years. To give you an example, a couple of examples, when I was still in school, there was a lot of emphasis on learning multiplication tables, right? So 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 20, 25, 30. And back then, it made a lot of sense, right? Computers were hardly there, at least back in India, and calculators were also not that commonplace. But now we have this thing in our pocket, right? This is a supercomputer. This can do almost all arithmetic that you would ever need in your life. Now, there is no reason for you to memorize those tables. Same is the case with writing, right? So yeah, you should be able to read what's written, but there is no reason why you need to be able to hold a pen and write. You need to know how to type on a keyboard. You need to know what I looks like, what T looks like, and you need to be able to type on your keyboard. If you don't know how to write it with a pen, it shouldn't matter because we are not there anymore. Now we are moving to a different plane of intelligence. So this is all becoming possible because we have the right technology with us. Now AI, yes, it comes with a lot of fear. And this fear is not unique to AI. When I was in India and when computers became more and more common, there was a proposal by the government that let's put computers in our banks and have ATMs. So you wouldn't need to stand in a queue in a bank to get your cash or deposit a check. You can do it at the ATM. And there was a huge strike from all the bank employees saying that, oh, this is going to take away my job. Now, no jobs were taken away, but it just added so much value for the whole society. Now, this is what AI is doing as well. It's creating or it's freeing up so much time for us so that we can start thinking of better things. So I think technology has not just complemented human intelligence, it has helped us reach to a new level of intelligence.
So that's super interesting. Unfortunately, our time, it's coming to an end. And I like to, conclude with one last thing. If you have a wish about the technology you're working on, or the product you're working on, or the class of products you're working on, to see happening in the next 2 to 4 years, what would be that wish? Like what it is that you wish happening in the near future?
Yes, of course, the whole field of AI is huge. So many different things are happening. I really enjoy working in NLP One of the reasons is because it's so difficult, and at the same time, it is so widely applicable. But there is one part of AI which I wish I could be more involved in, and it's the study of human genomics. The reason being, I think personalized medicine is a huge opportunity, and we have the ability to not just make humans super intelligent, but at the same time make them super robust and have them much longer lifespans. So I think that's one area that fascinates me a lot. So I read about that, but I'm very disconnected from that field of research and applied AI. So I wish I could do a little bit of that as well.
So maybe you let me to find a speaker for that and give me some, material that we can research on. So
Sure.
it was great having you here. It was really a great pleasure, and thank you so much for being with us. We wish all the best for your current endeavors and your new startup. And for our guests, thank you for being here, and we look forward bringing you other interesting speakers like Piyush himself. Thank you so much. Bye bye.